Hello, everyone, and as always, welcome back to Strategy Gaming Dojo, where we find, learn, and play one more turn of the great strategy games. Today, back into the big, bad Gary Grigsby's War in the Pacific Admirals Edition, and we hover over the Aleutian Islands, Adak Island, do. Well, that only happens because when I go to press record, we go flying skyward on the map. I want to hover over beautiful Hawaii, the five islands of beautiful Hawaii. Well, there's a hell of a lot more, but the five main ones. Because now I teased this a little bit in the combat summary yesterday, but I wanted to talk about how I'm now doing task forces and specifically tankers and cargo ships. Now, when I started the game, I started playing much like I do against the AI or against somebody that maybe doesn't necessarily know exactly what they're doing. And that is, I break them up into two or three. When I say two or three, a task force, two or three cargo ships. That way, if a Japanese sub happens to run into one of your task forces, you don't lose the whole damn navy out there, or cargo merchant marine fleet, I should call it. So I break them up, two here, three there, one here, one there, and send them out. And usually there's no problem with that. But our good friend Lodrick has brought the pain on that a little bit. He sent out a screen. He had a submarine screen right here in front of Pearl Harbor and ended up blowing. He got a couple of our smaller tankers. No, they were AOs. AOs. He got a couple of AOs. He got a few cargo ships, enough to annoy me. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. So I've changed tactics, and what I've done is really lessen the number of task forces I'm sending around, and I'm putting them all with escorts. And this is a perfect example of it, pulling away from Pearl Harbor. Now, you maybe remember a few turns ago, we had ships everywhere here. Those have all pretty much been consolidated into three or four main tanker task forces, and then I'm in the process of getting about six or seven main cargo task forces together. Now those are a little different because they're all kind of spread out and strung out, and so I'm having to wait for some of them to get to Pearl Harbor or to get to Los Angeles, one or the other, and then we'll put them together. But I wanted to show you this tanker task force that just pulled out of Pearl Harbor. So gosh darn, this thing's so heavy it can only get there. Now it was all getting all loaded up here, and let's check this out. But let's just check this hex out and look at the other stuff first. I've got the DMS Hove here, and the Hove is doing ASW combat. Now, if we look at the Hove, it's only a 2. It's not great, but as the Allies early on, you don't really have great ASW ships. You got to play with what you've got. So I've got the Hovey in a patrol zone, and if we look here, he's running from Hilo to Pearl Harbor up here with a react of 1 or 2. I can't remember. I guess I could look. It's 1. And so anything that kind of gets in and around the islands here, he's going to react to. I've also got patrol gunships or patrol craft, such as the PC Tiger. All right. The Tiger has a 2 anti-sub, and most of your destroyers and patrol ships will have a 2 at the start. That's just what you got, and so you got to do what you can. So with the patrol craft, what I like to do when I switch into this mode, which I'll call we're playing against a very good player mode, um, rather than being lazy, which maybe I was a little bit at the start. Not really. I mean, it took me 20 hours to set this up. That's not that lazy, but you know what I mean. I was being a little lax, I guess you would say. But once you determine you're playing against a very good player, what I like to do is take the patrol craft and have them do the basic anti-sub work in and around the island. So I've got this patrol craft. I've got the Reliance, which is out here, and the Reliance is also running around Pearl Harbor and around the islands out here. And I've got others. There are others out here, and they are doing anti-sub work. Then I've got DMS the Long that's mine sweeping. and he's kind of doing the same thing. All around Pearl Harbor, he's looking for mines just in case Lodrick decides to get crazy on us here and come up and mine the port of Pearl Harbor. So I've got him going around. I've also got subs. This one's actually moving out to Johnston Island because he threatened us out here before. So I've got wolf packs of subs. This is three of them: the tuna, the gar, and the grayling. I put them together. They are like subs. They all have a 20 speed. We got them up to the max react for subs, which is 1. They've also got good endurance. Now, eventually, these are the subs that we'll be sending over into the Japanese convoy lanes, but that's not until way out in 1942 when these things start to improve. They're not very good right now, but we can at least get out here and defend against him trying to land at Johnston Island or something like that. You can see I've also got a patrol craft out here. This is a patrol gunboat. The Sacramento, it does not have any anti-sub, but I mean it can kind of stand in the way if Lodrick wants to do something there. I've also got a submarine, another squadron out here. This is the Tambor, the Triton, and the Trout. They're all speed 20 as well. They are of the same class as the Tuna and all of that. That's got all the ones with the T's are all in the same class. They've got that 20 speed, which is really nice at the start of the game. They're, again, they're not great. And if you look at their loadout, they've got the Mark 14. So even if they hit something, which is a problem, it may not explode, which is another problem. So, just something to keep in mind. But anyway, back to the original point, which is so I've got submarines and patrol craft doing my basic anti-sub. Now, how does that differ from how I was playing before? Well, before I had destroyers out here doing anti-sub. Okay, and I will have some, especially around San Diego and LA. I do have a few coming out here from Pearl Harbor. I don't want you to think I just completely abandoned that. But the vast majority of destroyers I'll use just like this, especially your early war crappy destroyers. I call them crappy. I shouldn't do that. They're 6-point ships. Sometimes they're 5 or 4-point ships. It all depends on the endurance. I think like the Gamble's a 5, right? You can see it's got a little less. Oh, that's a DM. I'm sorry. That's a destroyer minesweeper. So what I like to do is either have 2 or 3 destroyers and a destroyer minesweeper, just in case he laid down mines outside of LA, outside of San Francisco, outside of Pearl Harbor. Get that minesweeper in there with them. Um, Now this one I have 3 destroyers and a destroyer minesweeper, which also has anti-sub. You'll see there. Why is that? Well, these are really very precious tankers, my precious. Alfred Clegg, the Montebello, California Standard, Pat Donahue. Sounds like a game show host. And the Manzanillo. Anyway, they're all like tankers. They all have a speed of 14. They've all got a really good endurance, but we've got them going back and forth from Los Angeles to Pearl Harbor. Now, I've taken everything pretty much off of continuous supply. Again, that's me being a little lax. When you're playing somebody good, get it off there and go and look at every dang task force every time. Now, if you're playing this way where you've really consolidated, when these guys came out here, I think these two were together. I think the standard was on its own, and I think maybe these two were together. So it was like 3 different task forces with no escort, no dedicated escort. Now we had destroyers out here running, anti-sub, but we didn't have any destroyers directly with them. And so now you see this is how I'll be setting up task forces. And when you have when you consolidate them and have a lot fewer task forces, the game's actually easier once you've done it to manage. All right, so let's go into Pearl Harbor and just look at another one of the. Well, one thing we've got here is an air transport. So you can see we've got air transport coming out of here with 2 destroyers. So we've got the AK, the Panamon. It's heading to Sydney with this fighter group. And what is that fighter group? It's some Airacobras, 8 of them. Now, with Lodrick just sallying down the Australian coast, we have got to take some aircraft and get them over to Australia. So he can't just go into a place like Sydney and blow everything out of the port. We've got to start getting aircraft over that way, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Now, we have some, and we've got a lot of them on naval attack because as you start out, the Australians actually have a lot of level bombers that are about, and you can put them on naval attack, but nothing substitutes for a good old fighter running cap over the top of you. So we've got these Airacobras. I actually, a few turns ago, sent a lot of fighters to Australia. And so we'll be getting them to Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and Townsville. Those are the big four, and we'll be running cap like madmen over the top of those ports so that we could afford to keep ships there. I mean, as it is now, I had to evacuate Townsville. I'm having to evacuate Brisbane, and it just causes all kinds of headaches when you can't even protect your own port. You know, it's just, it's a bad situation. Now, he's not going to be able to stay down there that long. He's going to have to go back, refuel, get put back together. By then, we should have planes in before he can do a second strafing run down the Aussie coast. But anyway, so we've got this, and it's heading out to Sydney in my super secret special waypoints. Here is another tanker task force. In this one, we've got the Larry Donaghy. That's the Donaghy brothers. The Gulf King, the Connecticut. Again, very, very important tanker ships here. I probably should give them another destroyer. So let's go in here. I mean, we've got destroyers out the wazoo up in here. Let's get anything that's not in a task force. All right. It looks like these are the 6500s, what I've got in there now. We'll just give him a 5750. How about that? So now he's got 3 destroyers in this big old tanker force. It's currently unloading into Pearl Harbor here. Then we're going to send it back to Los Angeles, deadhead, pick up more fuel, bring it back out. And so, as you can see, I've split up the bigger ones. So the Donaghys, I split them up. I'm sorry, bros. But I split them up. The St. Clair, I think over in the other one, there's a couple more 14 250s, and then the majority of that one is 9430s. And as you can see, these are our American task forces. These are American tankers. For a look at Canadian tankers, let's go not there. See, I'm having these guys sit here and wait for more of these type of ships, and I'll send them out with destroyers. I have these 2 destroyers going out and meeting a transport task force that's going to Australia. I've got this support task force with mine layer, sub tender, destroyer tender. I've got a plane tender, a repair ship, an AO. I've got that whole kitchen sink out here going along with the Chew and the Schley up to Dutch Harbor. Now, I don't know if I'm going to keep them at Dutch Harbor. I may actually move them up to Kodiak eventually because they're a little exposed out there. You don't really have enough air power. Dutch Harbor does not start with an airfield. And so that's kind of odd. It's your best port down in the Aleutian Islands, but it doesn't have an airfield. And so you either have to use Cold Harbor or Adak, or you can build the airfield at Dutch Harbor, which I'm also doing, and I'll just decide where I'm going to put those. But I'm putting this support group. I grabbed, a bunch of support. You can still see we've got 67 ships still sitting at Pearl Harbor. So, I mean, there's more to go. But I'm taking some of these. I'm sending them up to Dutch originally. They may eventually go to Kodiak. With a couple of destroyers, and the destroyer tender, I believe, has ASW as well. This one does not. I think does the AVD? Yeah. So this is a plane tender, the Clemson AVD class, but it does have some anti-sub as well. So it's like we've got 3 destroyers going with that as it heads up to Dutch Harbor. Another patrol gunship. It's got a patrol zone out here, but it's just back in refueling right now. We've got some minesweepers. Here's what I was looking for. This is the Canadian tanker group. So all of these originally came out of Vancouver, and we want them to go back to Vancouver, as you can see. And I've got, you said, well, you've only got 1 destroyer, my friend. What are you doing? That's the mulch. That is true, but we have these KV, the Corvettes. These are Canadian craft, but they've got a 4 ASW. So we've actually got even, it's even better when you put the Corvettes in here. And we have more Corvettes back in Vancouver. So I'm going to send even more tankers there and have these Corvettes go with the tankers. Now you may say, well, they don't have enough endurance to get out there. Au contraire, my friend. What happens is that this task force will share fuel. So you can put these destroyers and these Corvettes in here, and when they start to run out of their endurance, they just grab fuel from the tankers themselves. Now, this is currently unloading. It just came into Pearl Harbor, and I put this together. When it's done, then it'll return to Vancouver in a few turns. We got PT boats. What else? Well, we've got all of our aircraft carriers here. The Lexington Saratoga Enterprise. That's fun. This next turn, we'll get the Yorktown. I believe that's December 23rd. If we look back at San Diego, we've got one ship in port. That's going to be the ACM or the mine tender, the obstructor. And so I think it's next turn we get the Yorktown. Now, we will not sail that well. I guess we could go look, couldn't we? And that reminds me, let's actually go look at the stats after the last combat phase, okay? So sorties, last time we ran 5100, the Japanese ran 7200. So again, Lodric being very, very aggressive with his sorties. Well done, Lodric. He's up to 57,000. We're at 35,000. You may, if you watch my Let's Play against the AI, by this point in the game, we had run more sorties than the AI. Lodric's not going to allow that to happen. Air-to-air losses, he really got the best of us here. 17-3. A lot of that's happening in Singapore because Lodric is doing something very smart that you should keep in mind if you play the Japanese side, and that is the AI will just send in bombers with a fighter escort. Okay, and we talked about this in the combat phase, but when the AI does that, the fighters are kind of fighting with one arm tied behind their back, or one wing tied behind their back, if you will, because they've got to protect the bombers. And I don't know the exact algorithm for this game, but I'm almost 99.9% certain that they fight with a bit of a penalty when they're doing pure escort duty like that. And so against the AI, we were able to rip up some zeros a little bit because they were busy with the bombers. So what's Logic doing differently? Well, if you look at fighters, they really have two different things they can do. They can even either do the escort, which I just mentioned, or they can do something called sweep. And what is a sweep? Well, you send the fighters out over the city or the base or whatever, and it draws the cap up, the defensive cap. So the defensive, air patrol comes up to meet these fighters because if you think about it, radar or even ground watchers wouldn't necessarily be able to know exactly what kind of planes are coming in. They're like, well, there's 20 Japanese planes. We saw it. Let's Morse code it into Singapore. Okay, so that happens, and they're like, oh, shoot, we got to get some planes up in the air. Well, they get up in the air and they find out they're all Japanese Zeros. They're all fighters, and those fighters don't have to worry about escorting bombers. They're not having to slow themselves down. They're not having to stay on the bombers' wings. They're not having to play defensively. They can be completely offensive because they don't have any bombers with them, and that's a sweep. And when they do that, they get your cap up, and he's been tearing me up above Singapore. Whereas against the AI, I think we were probably running even, if not a little above even, because it was all escort. But he's doing a lot of sweeps, and if you play as the Japanese player, do that. Do that because it's very hard to counter because the Zero is really the best plane in the game at this point in the game, or at least the combination of the Zero and the good Japanese pilots is the best combination in the game at this point. And until we get more and more pilots trained up, the Flying Tigers are very good, but they're over in Burma or they could be in China. They're not going to be out over Singapore or Manila or places like that. There, you've got a lot of green U.S. pilots, and they really are going to struggle against good Japanese pilots in zeros. So he's sending these sweeps in, and it's been very, very effective Certainly. Okay, so air losses were 17 to 3. It's about 200 to 100, let's call it. It's close to that. Destroyed on the field, none. I hate that. We've had 58 in the campaign, a lot of that in the Philippines. Destroyed by flak, we had none, he had none. I don't like that. I mean, we've got flak in place in places like Singapore. Even some of our troops that are moving have anti-aircraft, so I would like to see that bump back up. Operational losses, they ran about even this time, 6 to 5. We had that one turn where we had a lot of operational losses early on. Since then, it's been very acceptable. Nothing really stands out. I'm sitting at 321 political points. I can tell you this little movement he's made down Australia has me buying out air squadrons like crazy, and we're going to get those to Australia, to Suva, to Nomaya, to Pago, to every place down in the Pacific, Auckland, all of the places that we are in the Pacific, but especially over in Australia with Sydney and Brisbane and Townsville, and even Melbourne. We're going to get planes, fighters to run cap. We're going to get bombers to run naval. Hey, if nothing else, rather than having them sit back here and train, they're going to get on the job training. You're going to get plenty of planes as the game goes on. If you lose 20 bombers, but you take out a cruiser, a Japanese cruiser, or even better, a battleship or something, it's well worth it. So I'm sending a lot of airplanes to the Southwest Pacific. Okay, so political points 321. I'm spending those on buying things out. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's go up here to Los Angeles. And we've got a lot of aircraft at Los Angeles. You can see here it all is. And let's go look at each and every one of them. We've got Bolos, we've got the fighters, the Lightning, we've got Marauders, which are bombers. Now, these are not tethered to the U.S. Fifth U.S. bomber is not restricted. And you can see that here, and you may say restricted. What does that mean? Well, the developers put an idea in the game that, look, rather than allowing you to take everything on the U.S. West Coast, put it on a ship and sit it in Australia, let's say, um, certain units are going to be restricted, because let's say the 4th USAAF spent all of its time in the United States during the war. Realistically, the US was not going to send every damn plane it had in the world over to Australia. It was going to make sure that if the Japanese got any ideas of coming to the US West Coast, they had plenty of planes here. Plus, they just need a lot for training. I mean, all of your pilots start off pretty down. You can see here, here's the experience of the pilots. 32, 29, 32, 31, 46. The Japanese pilots are up in the 60s, and it makes a huge difference in air warfare. So, this experience needs to be brought up. And as you can see, I have every single one of these on training, except this one, at 100%. And actually, we need to get over here to the Kingfisher. You pop that up to 100. These just came in this time. Don't be mad at me. Kingfishers, we're going to do naval search with those. They're a float plane, that's fine. Naval search, what they're going to be doing most of the time. 6,000 feet's fine. Maximum range 0, so they take fewer operational losses. And we're going to train those guys up. So let's go back and look at the list again. And you can see here they're all except this Kingfish. Oh, we had 2. Oh, I'm actually glad I looked. I thought I had taken care of all those. Okay. So there we go. We've got all of these at 100% training, but these guys here, the Marauders, who actually are right around 50% experience for the most part, we are going to get them over to Australia as fast as we can, or maybe even up into Java and whatnot. Whoops, I'm all the way up here. I had to step away for a second. I had boiling soup on the stove, the inside of Strategy Gaming Dojo. No, I had to put that on pause for a second. Now, you wouldn't have noticed it, but I had to walk away and then go make sure my soup was okay. I looked over and I thought, oh, wow, I've been talking longer than I thought. Anyway. We've got some Warhawks that could potentially get out here. So when I go to the top of the screen to do the recording, it gets us all the way up here. I guess we can go and look, and goes to show you the best war game ever made. Anytime you got a key, you're essentially playing a war game. Or war game. Board game. Well, it's the best war game ever made, too. Anyway. These Warhawks you'll see here are an 11th USAAF. That's Alaska. 11th is really Alaska. 10th is Southwest Pacific. So we need to get these Warhawks out and about as fast as we can. And it's just all about finding the right ships to get them out there. So let's go back. Let's look at Los Angeles. What do we have for ships? Well, as you can see, I've started to load some up, and we're waiting because I actually want to take more than this, but I am going to go ahead, I think, and load that one group up, and you can see the air groups that become available. Um, Now, I don't have any of these in strategic mode, but then you see restricted, 4th Fighter Command. We would have to buy that. We would have to, and when I say buy that, you have to spend political points, right? And so I'm not going to spend any on these guys because we have other units that need to go anyway. We've got 5th U.S. Bomber Command. Okay, I mean, we could, take some of that. You could always tell the planes here. You can tell what type there are, fighter, bomber. Um, Looking down here, we have Forward Air Central Pacific. Now, these are going to be patrol craft. That's usually what makes up Forward Air Central Pacific. We've got more bombers down here. And then we finally get here to the one I was looking for, 10th USAAF, which we will, if we go look at this, we can't get it to it from there. Hold on, I'll show you here in a second. But let's go ahead and start loading them on. So we'll select that. Let's verify the load. It's going on the Luckenbach. Now you may say, no, not the Luckenbach, because we can convert that into a tender. I've already converted every dang Luckenbach in the game to a tender. This one I need is cargo ship. So let's accept that load, and now you can see he's starting to load these aircraft on. We've got it as air transport, okay? And then if we go to the Luckenbach here and we look, let's click on that. Gosh darn it, I can't get to it from this screen. I wanted to show you, let's go to the one that's in 11th. All right, let's go to this one, and we can actually click on its attached to. And where's the 11th? You see it's West Coast restricted, but you can load it on something. It's not restricted because you can take it up to Alaska. That's really where 11th is. If we look at for 10th, let's go look for 10th. 10th USAF. It's actually Southeast Asia. Interesting. I thought it was Southwest Pacific. Either way, there's no R next to it, so it's not restricted. It's not restricted like 4th is restricted. Air West is restricted. 4th Bomber Command is restricted. 4th Fighter Command is restricted. So right now, let's go up to Alaska very quickly. Right now, I have all of the planes in 11th up here at Anchorage. Now, I will move them down here. I haven't decided where to put them yet. Kodiak, Cold Bay, we're building the airport at Dutch Harbor or Airfield. Adak, we could put it down here, as you can see. If I can get over it, there we go. Air capacity, it's a 0, but I've got it building. Whereas Dutch, if you look at the air capacity down the line up there, you see air capacity 0, 0. All right, so anything that we build here is going to cost extra supply. Cold Bay air capacity is 1 of 2. We could take this to a 2 of 2 and put them in here. I would like to, bring some support here, and I do have a base force on the way. You can see I put a base force on Adak, and I've also put some infantry in here. Same with Dutch, and then we could do the same with Cold Bay and put some planes out here. We'll see. We'll see. I don't know. But if we look at these guys, they are in 11th USAAF, 11th USAAF, 11th. And then if we look down here at the command, hey, what do you know? It's 11th USAAF Air Headquarters. I know some people will put those down in Seward, and we may eventually do that. I think that's how Cole's spreadsheet has you do it, is put them in Seward, put it all in Seward, because ultimately, if the Japanese did happen to come this way, they would probably have to land in Seward to do anything. So a lot of times people move down there, and I probably will eventually. I just haven't done it yet. So 11th is up here. All right. So if you think about the West Coast, we've got 4th USAAF. All right. That is like the big overall command. It's the 4th. Think of it as like an army group or something, but in the air. It's the 4th USAAF. The armies, quote unquote armies underneath it, are 4th Fighter Group and 4th Bomber Command, or Fighter Command, 4th Bomber Command. And as you may suspect, 4th Fighter Command mainly has fighters in it, or probably all fighters. 4th Bomber, that does have some fighters in it, but they're really trained to be escorts of the bombers, right? So those are restricted West Coast, and really you get enough planes, you usually don't have to buy many of those out. But let's go look at a place where we do have planes that aren't restricted, and that would be in Seattle here. Whoops, that's not what I was looking for. This is what I was looking for. Uh, this is a big group of Airacobras. We've got, 69 of them here, plus their command group or squadron that's got three. So altogether, we got 72 planes here, and they're in two U.S. Fighter Command. If we go down here, there is two U.S. Fighter Command. As you can see, it's part of 5th USAAF, and now we just figured that out. That's down in the Southwest Pacific. So 10th is Southeast Asia. I didn't realize that. I got those two confused. I think Southeast Asia is 10th. There it is, 10th USAAF. The command for that has not yet arrived, the command counter. But it has, it hasn't for 5th USAAF either. If we go look for 2nd, let's look for 2nd. I'm pretty sure that's Pacific Fleet, but I could be wrong. Let's see. Well, I am wrong. Let's see. Where is 2nd? That's 3rd. Am I incorrect? It must be. Oh gosh, this is embarrassing. Um, well, hold on. I probably just went right over the top of it. I have no doubt. Oh, wait a minute. We just figured this out. It's 5th. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I got confused there. It's Southwest Pacific, 5th USAAF. Okay, so. Do I dare draw? No, I'm not going to. The basic idea is you have 11th up here. You've got 2nd right here, which is but it's 2nd fighter group, which is part of 5th USAAF. Okay. Um, and so that's good. We want them to go out to the Southwest Pacific. All of those Airacobras, 72 of them, I will usually put them either at Suva, Nomaya, or Brisbane. If we're under pressure. If not, I get them up to Surabaya and start trying to rip up Japanese transports, or Batavia for that matter, and rip up Japanese cargo fleet if we can. But that's usually against a poor AI player against a player that's not very good. I doubt Logic's going to allow us to get 72 Airacobras up into the Dutch East Indies, but hey, we'll see. But we got to load those up. Unfortunately, right now, I have the two ACMs at Seattle, and I have the Colorado and the Warspite getting fixed in the shipyard in Seattle. As you can see, they're pretty close to being fixed. The Warspite, a British battleship, is got 3 to go. We can look at that. It's a British battleship. Nice, big, awesome ship. 188 points, so no reason to go anywhere with it until you have to. Then we've got the Colorado, which is 185 points. That's a U.S. ship. You can still, it's showing it's damaged, but we're only 11 days away from that being all better. So just to recap, 11th USAAF up here, 5th USAAF is here, but that's really at this point just 2nd Fighter Group, which is part of the 5th. Down in San Francisco, I've got 4th Bomber Group. Okay, so the 4th Bomber Command is here, and if you look at these guys and we go and look at the air, they're all 4th U.S. Bomber Command. Now, sometimes and we've got the one recon group that's directly attached to 4th USAAF. As a matter of fact, let's move that down to March Field, and I'll show you why in a second. Because that's its commander. Um, well, are we running anything with this? No, we're training. Okay, I just wanted to make sure we were only training with it. Let's go to support. You can see I've really built up the support here at March Field. We'll send him over to March Field, which is where I put a lot of the things in 4th USAAF I'm probably never going to ship out. They just sit back here at March Field and they train. Or I put them up here at Ogden You can see Ogden. Now, this is actually 5th U.S. Bomber Group. You may say, I thought you just said that you'll send those out. Yeah, you can, but these are all B-17s, and you just don't have any use for them at this moment. So just to keep the aviation support, good here, I move a lot of these up to Ogden. A lot of the B-17s, I'll move back here and have them train at Ogden, just to kind of get them out of the way until later in the game when you're going to be bombing with the big B-17s. But that is not the case at this moment. So back down into San Francisco, like I said, we've got 4th Bomber. Here, if we go to Los Angeles, what do we have here? Nothing. Well, I mean, we do have one first U.S. Amphibious Corps is the one command here, but if we go back to March Field, you'll see here we have 2 air commands. All right. This is 4th USAAF Air Headquarters. It's got a command radius of 5. It's under Fickle, Jacob Fickle. Not particularly the greatest leader of all time. Decent administrator, though. And then what else do I have? 4th U.S. Fighter Command here. It also has command radius of 5. It's under William O'Ryan. Um, and yeah, so if we look at all the what we have at March Field, 4th U.S. Fighter, 4th USAAF, 4th Fighter Command. So I've got the fighters and the USAAF stuff down here at March. I've got 4th Bomber up here. You can consolidate them if you want to. I usually just kind of split them up this way. But you could move all these back to Ogden or Salt Lake City or something like that and move them only to the front when you want them. But I like to have the planes right up here near the front so I don't, forget about them, especially, at LA. So we looked at March, we looked at San Francisco. At LA, you'll notice I've got some of these 5th U.S. Bomber Commands, these ones we were talking about, the Marauders, that we can get off the coast, get them to Australia. So I've got them sitting right in LA. So the moment I have cargo available, I can stick them on cargo. And also this 11th USAAF. Now that is 20 Warhawks. We may buy that out. We may put that in 5th, or we may put it in something else. And also take that to Australia. But I've got cargo coming back for that. I've already got one group ready to go. I haven't set where I want it to go yet. I'll do that as we add more ships and make it a bigger task force. All right. Okay, let's go jump around the map really quickly and just see what's going on. We've got a lot happening at Abaddon as always. Now, I have even consolidated these task forces up here to make sure that they have escort because he's been so aggressive. I would not be surprised to see a submarine even all the way up here by Karachi because he knows that's our ultimate dumping off point, right? So you may say, what are these? They look like destroyers or corvettes. Well, I do have one corvette here, the Janista, that's coming back into port. Then I have patrol craft or AMs. So this one's AM, the pool. It's a minesweeper. You can see the Brits are better at anti-submarine warfare in 1941, certainly. So I've got him running anti-sub right outside of Karachi. And then I've got a patrol gunboat, the Indus, which is also a 4, as the British like to do. He's also running anti-sub right here. So I've got, AMs and PGs and PCs running anti-sub. Meanwhile, I have the Corvette coming back in here because he is going to get into a big tanker task force, such as one of the ones I'm sending back. Now, I'm not sending back the British Venture yet. Well, I do have it set on Abaddon. I may have that KV just meet up with him, but I haven't decided exactly. These are unloading. All right, and then we have a local minesweeper. Here you see we have the Frisia, which is another KV. We have another KV that I just have sitting here. He's actually going to go down to Bombay. I'm wrong. He's going to go to Bombay because I'm starting to use Bombay a lot as well. But the Frisia, for instance, we can just disband that because I'm going to wait and put together a big um, tanker task force that goes back and forth to Abaddon. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to take the British Venture and I'm going to disband that as well so that I've got them both in here. Let's go to active ships. I've got those two here, and when we get more tankers in, I'm going to put it together into a really nice big task force. And then I just have the PGs, PCs running the patrol zones, and I'll put the KVs in with the actual task forces. Now, as you can see, I've got a lot of stuff going back to Aden. I've got stuff going back to Abaddon. I've got things loading up at Abaddon. If we look at Abaddon, you can see all of the task forces getting ready to go. For instance, this task force, I've got the Athelstan coming with it. Let's see if I've got another tanker task force it makes more sense with. Not really that one. All right. I've got some work to do to figure out exactly how to put these together, but this is the size of task force that I'm going to be dealing with. This is a little too small. We would want that one to be bigger, and we do have other ships we can put in there. But this tanker task force is ripe for getting a KV in it. Now, unfortunately, you can't do that until he comes back on the map, and then we'll have the KV get in there. It'll be part of that tanker task force, and I'll probably put this tanker that's here in there. I've been soaking a lot of fuel out of Abaddon and putting it into Karachi already, and that's only going to continue. I'm using Bombay as my secondary base. I'll be doing a lot of the same. That's why I'm sending the KV down here. Now, what I like to do is have Abaddon go into Karachi. That just spreads out all over India. Then I like to have Bombay go into Colombo. Now, previously I was having a few things run down from Abaddon and Aden to Colombo, but I think it's easier because if you look, Bombay ends up getting a lot of stuff. It's got 115,000 tons of fuel and 87,000 tons of supply, and that, it's coming down the rail from Karachi and otherwise. And so I'm just going to run cargo that we want to run to Colombo. I'm going to run that out of Bombay. It's a short little hop, skip, and jump down to Colombo. Now, Colombo is already looking pretty good. 80,000 supply, 59,000 in fuel. I've also got troops and planes coming to Colombo. I find that Colombo often decides really competitive games. He will eventually be over here trying to do something with Colombo. And as you'll see, we've got the entire damn British Navy out here that's at least active in the Indian Ocean. I've got them all put together. Now, am I going to stay at Colombo? We'll see. I mean, the Hermes can't hang with any kind of good Japanese carrier that comes over here, but really that's very risky for him to do. I mean, if he brings a carrier over here, we've got planes that can come from all over and try to get shots at it. Now, I am bringing planes down to run cap over Colombo. Those are coming out of Aden, I believe, and I'm also transferring bombers down from Karachi and otherwise down into Colombo so we can run naval attack. And then you're going to constantly be getting stuff at Aden or Cape Town that you can bring to Colombo. Excuse me, but I am going to be building Colombo to the hilt, including putting a lot of British troops in there. Troops that were, for instance, supposed to go to Singapore, but I'm going to put them into Colombo instead of wasting them at Singapore, which is really a lost cause at this point. Hey, check it out. Somebody asked about this on a previous stream. There it is. Nope. There it is. The Prince of Wales. We're about to get the Prince of Wales into Colombo. Now, I will not keep it at Colombo. It's too exposed there. It's worth too many points. I'll either eventually take it to Cape Town or I'll put it up in Bombay or otherwise. But the Prince of Wales maybe has made it out. We'll see. He's got a little further to go. But if you look, that's very important. 202 points here. He did get hit. He's got 47 major flood damage. They have been having problems keeping the flood damage to a minimum, but he's almost out of here. We'll see. We'll see. I hope. I let him sit here for quite some time, and then I brought him straight up the Strait of Malacca. Now that's one of the things I hate about playing another human is I don't want to give everything away, right? And So I was really excited because I knew it was the turn a couple of, well, 3 or 4 turns ago now. I was like, okay, it's time to try to sneak the Prince of Wales out of here because he's landed, but I don't think he has any of this stuff on naval attack, which I wouldn't either. I mean, I've gotten everything else out of Singapore. So there, I mean, there's what you're seeing, the anchor you're seeing here is like some local minesweepers that are damaged or something. I mean, I just don't have any ships here. So I finally floated him out here, and he went with the Danae that I clicked on here first. The Danae also got damaged. It's a British like cruiser. It's gone the whole way with it as these guys look like they might get out. We'll see. I know he's got submarines in the area, but I have KVs coming down here. I've got a KV coming to meet him, as a matter of fact. Yeah, it's right here. I've got a destroyer escort and a KV. That Corvette has got a 4 anti-sub. The destroyer escort has a 6, I think. He does, yeah. So I'm really trying to, prep against any kind of submarine attack if a submarine gets on the sniff of the Prince of Wales. But it looks like the Prince of Wales will get out. We lost some ships at Port Blair. I just turned this guy back around. Port Blair's not that important. The one that got damaged, I've got sitting here, or maybe both of them. Yeah, I've got 2 of these little AKLs here. I'll wait for the sub to go away, and then we'll start trying to run back in here, but we'll do it with escort. Now, you got to watch it because you can get bombed from the land here. Rangoon, we're good. We've almost got everything back to Mole Mine, and we have almost got the full division here. First Burma division. I've almost got all of that into. Oh, they are all into Rangoon. I got them all in. I brought them in from Calcutta, Colombo, and otherwise. I got them all in here. They just have to get unpacked. The minute they get unpacked, we can rebuild the first Burma division. That's pretty strong out here. You can see we're climbing. We're almost up to 500 garrison. I believe I've got all the replacements on here. I do. Replacements and upgrades are on at Rangoon. And so these guys are building even further. I've got more stuff that's going to come in. We're really going to put up a nice defense at Rangoon. I've got everything else going to Colombo or Calcutta, and that's going to be our triangle of defense. The triangle of defense. India, I'm not sure there's too much more to talk about there. In Malaysia, we're all turtled up in Singapore. It's just a matter of time. These guys are trapped. These guys are sort of trapped. Now they'll be able to get down in the area, but they'll eventually be, hitting these guys from behind while they're trying to attack Singapore. They're going to run out of supplies at some point. They've just been, retreating in front of these guys. But we have a really nice big force at Singapore, and we've got the Aussies about to pop back in here in just a second. You can see we've got Aussies, we've got some of 3rd Indian Corps. I also landed troops in Java, British troops that are going to Batavia and Surabaya. We'll be looking at that in the future. We'll come back, look at Australia. I think that'll do it for this time. I just kind of wanted to give you guys an update. Um, when we come back next time, it'll be the combat resolution, I think, for the 23rd and 24th of December. Shit, we're almost into 1942. That's great. Thanks, guys. This has been Strategy Gaming Dojo. I'll talk to you next time.